Grotesque horror has become mainstream in a way that I never thought possible. Weapon's success this weekend proves it. This movie is going to make $40 million domestically. This movie has mainstream actors. This is nothing short of revolutionary that we are seeing here. In my screening, there was a woman in her late 60s, early 70s who went because she saw an ad on this movie. This is such a popular movie that it has crossed over to commercial viability amongst audiences that would not be the target demographic. Now, please don't get me wrong. I am not saying that horror hasn't crossed over before. You've had iconic horror come out, whether it's the Universal monsters, whether it's the slashers like Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger, Jason, Ghostface. Those are all mainstream horror. Hitchcock's mainstream horror. But to see something like this movie, Weapons, which is disgusting, which is grotesque, which has some just so non-commercial ideas in it, to see it have this level of mainstream success and recognizability from audiences is kind of awe-inspiring, and that's what I want to talk about. This trend isn't necessarily new. I think films like Terrifier 3 and Final Destination Bloodlines are in the same lineage. Films that are very grotesque, very brutal, very bloody, that find a huge box office audience, that finds critical success. Weapons feels so unique because it's such a new filmmaker who's been elevated to the highest of levels so quickly. And that's what I find really exciting, is to see somebody that is actively experimenting with film, who is challenging the audiences and is pushing our expectations in new and creative ways. I think Zach Cregger is a master at that, and that's why I want to talk about Weapons, what it meant to me watching it, and what I thought walking away from it. I have a few theories on what is happening, why this is happening at this time, and that's what I want to explore in my review of Weapons today. And I want to make this clear. This will be no spoilers. I do not want to spoil this movie. Go in as blind as possible. That is the best possible way to enjoy this movie. The premise of Weapons is at 2:17 a.m., 17 children from the same classroom walk out their front doors, run away, and disappear, leaving one main culprit, their teacher. Yet something is afoot in this small town of Pennsylvania that suggests a far more nefarious force at work. I have three theories on what makes this movie successful with audiences and critics alike. And I think this is the biggest one. This is the one that feels most important. Audiences want something that feels new, but also has shades of familiarity. And Zach Cregger is a master of that in his genre storytelling. This is the very concept of this movie. I think if you watch this movie, some of the shades of influence are so obvious, and it's true with Barbarian as well. Here is just a few of the names that I came up with while thinking about what Weapons feels like. This feels like the films of Sam Raimi. I thought that same way about Barbarian, that this felt like an Evil Dead type movie, and Weapons does that as well. It is so heavily influenced by Sam Raimi, his comedic horror sensibilities. You also have other directors in there. I think Roman Polanski's horror films like Rosemary's Babies are undeniably an influence in here. Kevin Smith comedies was another one that I made note of. Hitchcock thrillers, M. Night Shyamalan mystery films, Paul Thomas Anderson's Magnolia is a huge influence on this film. Jordan Peele's filmography, Quentin Tarantino's nonlinear storytelling, David Lynch, John Carpenter, Peter Jackson. These are all clear influences within Weapons. That's just the ones that came from the top of my mind. I'm sure I'm missing hundreds. So what Zach Cregger does so well as a director and as a storyteller is he's able to utilize these things that exist, that engage with something that we are familiar with, and bring to life those sensibilities, yet apply them in a way that feels new and fresh, yet still giving us that familiar thing that we all enjoy. It's not nostalgia, but it is certainly playing on something that we grew up on, at least me for sure. And I think this comes largely through Zach Cregger's casting of actors. I think both of his films have shown a strong ability to know how to utilize an actor and get the most of them for his story. Barbarian is a great example of this, whether it's Bill Skarsgård in Barbarian and promoting that movie heavily on Bill Skarsgård. You know what you think he is going to do in that movie. It is him coming off Pennywise, the It films, so you have an idea of what his role is going to be. So when the movie subverts it, it makes it for a much wilder experience. Same with putting an actor like Justin Long in Barbarian. And having him be this funny blowhard in the world of Barbarian, that just adds a new level of freshness to that movie. And I think that's all true in Weapons. I think he's just so smart in his casting decisions. We have Julia Garner as the teacher. This is an actress I'm not particularly familiar with. I know she was just in Fantastic Four. I didn't think she was that good in Fantastic Four, to be honest, but she is great in Weapons. And again, she's another one that I just felt so passionately that they casted so well. What we know about this character is she is a teacher with a past that has some people questioning her motives. The brilliance of the Garner performance is you really don't know what is up with this character. She feels both very kind and caring that you wouldn't believe her to be guilty, and yet she just does a lot of things that have you question her motives, that make you question yourself. Maybe she is guilty. It's a wire act that Julia Garner has to pull off, and I think she does it really well. There are many times where you believe that she's incriminating herself, and then there's other times where you have sympathy for her. You never really know what's going with this character until it's finally revealed. And I think it's also really important how young Julia Garner is in this movie. There is a naivety that comes with her being a 31-year-old actress that really works to this character and in this world. Josh Brolin is probably my favorite performance in Weapons. I think he is electric as a father of one of the missing kids, and I think this film uses him just in a way that so fits Josh Brolin. This movie was originally casted with Pedro Pascal in this role. I can't imagine a world where Pedro Pascal plays this character because it's so playing on his sheer physicality and largeness that Brolin is just a huge guy on screen. He looks bigger than everyone is. His arms look bigger than my legs. Like, that is a huge aspect of this movie, is just how damn intimidating he is in any room he is. And him filling up the screen is kind of key. And this intimidating size, this is also what Cregger does really well, is he's able to use that for comedic effect. Josh Brolin has the funniest laughs in this movie, and it's all intentional by the director, but it's not necessarily intentional by the character. It's the brilliance of not casting a comedic force in this role, because this is a very comedic part. But if you cast somebody with a comedy background, they're playing it for the joke. This is exactly what Josh Brolin does so well in a film like Deadpool 2. He's playing it so dead straight in this movie that it's kind of so absurdly funny when he ends up getting to some of the more comedic elements that this film eventually leads to. Alden Ehrenreich, who was always a favorite of mine, and he kind of got lost there for a second after being Han Solo and some of the negative press he received after that movie. He's great in this movie. He is a loser, scummy cop. One thing that Ehrenreich has always done very well is he has charisma. He has a natural talent and energy. In this movie, it's the exact opposite. He is the opposite of Han Solo. He is so unimaginably lame in this movie. And that's just such a testament, again, to Cregger's writing and casting decisions here. The Ehrenreich character, his story gets very muddled. And I will say the cop storyline was probably my least favorite of the main storylines. I felt that this section did drag. But then this is probably going to be a lot of people's favorite performance, and I totally get it. It's Austin Abrams who plays a homeless drug addict. Here's how I would describe this performance, and I mentioned the Kevin Smith influence that I felt earlier in this movie. Essentially, Austin Abrams is playing the Jason Mewes character from Jay and Silent Bob. That is essentially what this movie asks of him. It is take the character Jay and plop him in this world. What would that look like? What would he look like in the world of horror? I think Austin Abrams is so funny and does a great job with that. It is such a, I wouldn't call it endearing performance per se, but it is definitely one that is the one where it's most clearly being played for laughs, and Austin Abrams just fully understands the assignment. He's a blast in this movie. And having this list of actors plus a few more who appear that I don't want to spoil, having them all in this movie, it allows this movie to operate in multiple different tones and genres within minutes. That's something that really impressed me with Zach Cregger's direction in this movie, is 1 minute it can be a suspense thriller. The next, it's a surreal psychological horror film. The next, it's a family drama. The next, it's a horror comedy. Then we come to a slasher. Then it transitions into a pure slapstick movie. Then it becomes back again to a mystery abduction film. And it does all of this with ease. This sounds like it should be whiplash. It never feels like that watching the movie. It's a really impressive script that just moves, and it moves at a relentless pace, and yet you never notice these transitions. And I think that's what adds this level of fun. I think people desperately want films that surprise them and feel unique in this way. And that is just something that I think Weapons does masterfully. It does just feel unique in of its own. And that brings me to theory number 2 on why Weapons is connecting and why this film is successful. And I think people desire communal experiences that we used to get years ago. I often think of cable television kind of being one of those, where every week you'd watch Game of Thrones and you'd talk about it. You'd watch Breaking Bad. You'd watch Sopranos. You'd watch, even back in the day, like Dallas, Who Shot JR, or in the comedy side, Simpsons, Who Shot Mr. Burns. Like these touchstone moments that I think it's kind of been referred to as water cooler entertainment. I think Weapons is largely playing in that mold. I think movies are really the only thing that can do it in the streaming age. I think streaming has essentially killed television, the water cooler discussion. You still have a few that pop up, whether it's Stranger Things, whether it's Adolescence, but I think it becomes more hard and rare to do it due to the pace of which people watch stuff on streaming. Horror has always been something that has had this water cooler effect. I think of films like The Exorcist or The Sixth Sense, which is just, you need to see this film, you need to experience it, specifically the ending. The third act is so key. I'm so happy to report that Weapons has one of my favorite third acts that I can think of in a while. And this is meticulously designed by Cregger in a way that just impressed me. One of the things that I don't think many directors do nowadays is they don't design it with the theater in mind, and specifically the audience in mind. What Zach Cregger does really well is this is a communal experience, and it's best enjoyed as a communal experience. The story is told in a non-linear fashion, jumping from character to character. We start with the teacher, then the father, then the cop, then the drug addict, then the principal, etc., etc. Each chunk accumulates into Cregger showing a little bit more and revealing his hand a little bit. And now you're starting to get a clue, and it also resets the tension. And each one ends with a hard cut to black and then like a 5-second transition. Watching it, it's supposed to give you this feeling of, oh my God, what just happened? You're kind of looking around and the energy's kind of resetting in the crowd. It's really fun. It gives the audience a second to catch their breath, because this movie is told at relentless pace, and the finale of each of these stories is just so insanely crazy that you just need that second of reset. Again, and I keep mentioning Barbarian. See Barbarian if you haven't, but Barbarian does this in a really smart way when we introduce Justin Long. There is a first half of the movie, and then there's a second half, and Justin Long is in the second half of the movie. And the way that movie transitions to that is just such a masterclass of writing and direction. Cregger does this about 6 to 7 times in this movie. It's really impressive. Some movies can be viewed at home just fine. And I think horror has largely been a genre that is very discoverable at home. I think of every time I watched a horror movie at home, whether it was on one of my VHS tapes, whether it was on a DVD. And you can just enjoy horror that way. I think a lot of people have nostalgia for seeing a film and having that grain of a VHS tape. So horror can definitely be quintessential text viewed at home. Weapons is not that. Weapons is designed for an experience to be shared. I had the misfortune this morning of going to see Weapons at a 9:50 a.m. screening in what was basically an empty theater. No joke, there was about 5 of us at this screening. And we were all distanced from each other. There was no energy in this theater. There was no reaction. I think I was the only one who laughed in this movie. Maybe they were laughing, I couldn't hear it. You want the energy to be built up in this movie, and I think that's what the communal experience can give you. I even remember when I saw Barbarian, we were in a pretty empty theater, but I went with 3 other friends, so we were feeding off our own energy at the time. Seeing this movie solo alone, it definitely took away some of that. That was a mistake on my part. I wanted to see it so I could get a review out by Sunday. I should have waited to see it in a crowd. That was totally on me. I remember in 2017, I saw the film It. And there's the projector screen. And I saw it opening night with friends, sold out crowd. And when the projector jump scare happens, I literally jumped out of my seat and yelled, "Oh shit." That's what you kind of want from this movie. You want the audience just kind of going crazy. I texted a friend and talked with a friend when I was driving home from seeing Weapons. And I told him about my experience. He told me that he went last night, 10:45 p.m., sold out crowd, and how just of a different experience it was, and how the crowd was so into it and they were laughing at every beat. And I was just like, damn, I'm so envious of that experience. Instead of enjoying Weapons as an experience, I was trying to think through Weapons, I was trying to think of this as a metaphorical or allegorical text. When we see images of weapons, for instance, in this film Weapons, like there is a very clear shot of a gun that's really coolly displayed in one of the dreamlike sequences we see in this movie. I was like, oh, okay, is this movie an allegory for school shootings like Sandy Hook, where there's only one sole survivor? Or the fact is, I believe it was Parkland, the shooting happened at 219. Like, is he playing with all this? And I'm putting that in my mind, and I'm trying to essentially elevate it as I'm watching the movie. That's a cool way to still digest movies, and I think that's important for critical analysis, but it takes me out of the experience of watching a movie at that time when I am thinking about it in that fashion. I think what seeing it in a huge crowd would have allowed me to do was just get absorbed by this movie and then digest it later. Instead, I'm looking at this movie and also kind of nitpicking it at times, where I notice myself thinking, well, that's a weird character decision here, or, oh, would this really happen, or how is no one noticing this? Or is there enough mystery to keep this movie entertaining? I think when you're asking those questions, you just start noticing some of the flaws of the screenplay in place. And that's just not a fun way to enjoy movies. Again, it can be a very critically important way to enjoy it, but at the first time I want to be absorbed by this movie, and I think this movie could have absorbed me if I saw it in a different environment. That is not to then say Weapons is perfect, but you can only experience it in this one way. A movie has to stand alone. But I do think there are ways that a movie can be more special first-time viewing experience. This is going to sound rude of me. I don't mean it to, but this is something that I think Marvel used to understand pre-COVID, which was the theatrical experience. That's what made those movies really special, was going opening night, having those big reactions with a crowd, whether it's the Wakanda portals or whether it's Captain America grabbing the hammer or any of those big triumphant moments in Marvel movies. That's what Weapons has. Weapons has that throughout. And it was just a bummer for me that I didn't get to experience it that way. I wish I did. I wish I got to see it. I'll probably go back and see this movie with a crowd so I can experience it. Again, this is not to necessarily say that this movie is unsuccessful without it. It is that it's a different viewing experience that I don't think was supposed to be done that way. The reaction is part of the fun, and I think that's a compliment to Zach Cregger. I'm curious re-seeing this movie. I already pre-ordered this movie on 4K Steelbook edition yesterday before even seeing the movie. I am curious to see if this movie holds up at home, knowing the twists and turns of this movie. There's some films that stand the test of time, like The Sixth Sense, which I think plays great on Rewatch. And then there's other films like The Usual Suspects, which I actually don't think play very well knowing the twist of the movie. I'm hoping Weapons is in the former category. Theory number 3 for why this movie works so well and what Weapons is able to capitalize on in a very smart way, it's this idea that our world has become so scary that horror now serves as escapism. This is something that probably sounds like a stretch to some. I know for myself, this is real. Horror has become far more digestible as a genre for me over the past decade due to what I see and read on social media, and how far more upsetting that is than anything horror really conjures. So you have to give your audience a hook. You have to give them a reason to want to seek out this genre and to seek out this film and to actually be scared. You can't just do the old way of horror, which was put it on a cheap budget, make some gross stuff, people will eat it up. I think audiences are smarter than that, and they are now desensitized. Weapons does it by having things that are audacious, having ideas that are audacious, grand, that have this buzzworthy quality that will hit social media. In this movie, there's about 10 of those, especially in the finale. I cannot overstate how good this finale is. In many ways, Weapons reminds me a lot of Terrifier 3, which is a film that I personally wasn't a huge fan of myself, but it is cut from the same cloth. It's downright insane displays of excessive violence and gore. Terrifier 3 is sustained throughout the entire runtime, and I think when you keep it at that level, it loses some of the effect that some of the earlier kills in that movie have. What I think Weapons does is there isn't this excessive quality to it, but every time it's in there, it's really gleeful. It's really fun. And that's what this movie has. It's that balancing act of tones, these performances, the story structure, its finale. It's just loads of fun. That's what horror should be. It should be something that thrills you. It should be something that engages you. And I think Zach Cregger has become something of one of our best doing this. I'm really excited about this film. This is a film that I highly recommend. I can't wait to rewatch it, and I'm hoping some of my criticisms of this movie are going to be ironed out upon a rewatch. But this movie is ultimately a great time at the movie theaters and well worth your time. For Weapons, I'm going 4 out of 5 stars. So thank you to everyone who's watched this video, and I hope you consider subscribing for more. I'll have some reviews coming out in the next few days, so make sure you subscribe for all of that and more.